Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you're new. Thank you for taking time out of your day to check the video out. We have more PlayStation news, rumors, and leaks to go over and cover here today. So before we dive into these topics, if you end up enjoying the video or finding it informative, be sure to leave it a like. And if you are new here to the channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button as well. We're starting here with an important update regarding the potential Sony Kadokawa acquisition. For those who are unaware, there was a recent report that Sony was in talks to acquire Kadokawa, the parent company of From Software. That rumor or report was then verified by Kadokawa themselves, saying that yes, this is in fact a thing that is currently taking place, but no decision has been made. But now we have another update that I think maybe changes the perception of this potential acquisition. Originally, it was seen that Sony approached Kadokawa and Sony wants to acquire them and make what they own theirs. However, I came across this on the Gaming Leaks and Rumors subreddit where it says Kadokawa may have approached Sony to prevent a hostile takeover from Keiko, a Korean company. Keiko, a large South Korean company, has been buying shares in Kadokawa since 2020. It is possible that Kadokawa approached Sony on an acquisition to prevent a hostile takeover. This may also explain why this deal leaked, so that Keiko stops buying shares. So this is being reported in multiple spaces, and it's also worth noting that it says Keiko becomes the largest shareholder of Kadokawa with a 7.3% stake. That was in 2021. And it says here, typically the two parties agree to a share price for a deal. Sony is not going to end up paying whatever Kadokawa's valuation rises to. What I meant was now if Keiko wanted to do a takeover, they'd have to cough up even more cash. So leaking it intentionally could make sense. This is what people are kind of picking up with this situation because it's very unusual for for negotiations for a deal like this to leak out, or let alone to be confirmed by the actual company. A lot of people were saying that this is a bit suspicious and it seems like there's something going on here. And based off of people kind of looking deeper into it, this is what they've come up with, that basically Kadokawa is likely the one that approached Sony in order to prevent a hostile takeover. So obviously this puts Sony in a bit of a position where they have to kind of decide, should we go through with this? Would this be a good acquisition? But I also want to highlight something else that's been a major point of discussion with this potential acquisition that I'm sure many of you have seen as well. There's a lot of concern from a lot of different people across the internet about Sony owning Kadokawa. There's two main points of concern. The biggest point of concern is in the anime and manga space. People are afraid that if Sony ends up acquiring Kadokawa, it essentially gives Sony a monopoly in this space because of how big Sony already is within the anime and manga sector, but also how big Kadokawa is. There are people saying that this should absolutely not be a thing that goes through because it's going to create a monopoly in that space. So that's absolutely a good reason for something like this to not go through. We don't want to see monopolies of any kind, regardless of, what area they pertain to. But the second reason of concern, and this is one that I actually disagree with, is when it comes to From Software. Now, we've been talking mainly about the gaming side because, well, that's, I think, what most of us care about here. And Sony would end up getting From Software. There is this fear coming from some people that Sony is effectively going to end up ruining From Software if they acquire them. Now, I understand where this comes from, but I don't agree with this because I think people kind of forget that From Software has already worked very, very closely with Sony multiple times in the past, to a point where, they were basically treated, at least for the titles that they were working on exclusively for Sony, like a first-party studio. I think people kind of forget that Bloodborne was also developed in partnership with PlayStation, and that Demon's Souls was developed in partnership with PlayStation. And especially when you think about Bloodborne, this is regarded as the best From Software game ever made by a lot of players. So I think that the fear is a bit unfounded here. I think it's a bit unfair to immediately jump to the conclusion that if Sony were to have, ownership of From Software, that they would immediately end up ruining them. Is it a possibility? Of course, there's always risk involved with stuff like this. But generally speaking, I think it's been proven over time that both Sony and From Software actually work incredibly well together. But right now, this is where we are when it comes to this acquisition. It's hard to say if it's going to end up going through or not. It seems as though Kadokawa does not want to be taken over by Keiko here. So it really, I think, boils down to Sony and whether or not they're going to pull the trigger on this one and go through with it. And obviously, there is valid concern when it comes to the anime and manga side of this, where we don't want to see a monopoly. But at the end of the day, if this is what they end up doing, this is what they end up doing. I will honestly be paying much closer attention to the gaming side to see what ends up happening there, but I will continue to keep you guys updated when we get more information. So we're going to move on to the next topic here, which talks about Cyberpunk 2077 not getting a PS5 Pro enhancement, being reported by PlayStation Lifestyle. CD Projekt Red has said that it currently has no plans for Cyberpunk 2077 PS5 Pro enhancement updates, and some fans are convinced that they know the real reason why: the game's infamous PlayStation Store delisting. Cyberpunk 2077 launched in a near unplayable state on PS4 and Xbox One, prompting players to demand refunds. While Microsoft obliged, Sony decided to scrub the game from the PlayStation Store altogether. While we see where the speculation comes from, it's highly unlikely that Cyberpunk 2077's PS5 Pro patch has anything to do with its prior delisting. Work on Cyberpunk 2077 began before the PS4 generation, and with development wrapped up, CD Projekt Red probably has little incentive to go back to an old project. The studio is not only working on the game's sequel, it's also busy with its next game in the Witcher series. In other words, CD Projekt Red is very, very busy. So yeah, I wanted to inform you guys of this because we have a big AAA developer basically letting everybody know that they are not going to be supporting the PS5 Pro. And it's very understandable why people would be frustrated by this, because CD Projekt Red, they're very talented, and Cyberpunk 2077 is one of these games that would probably benefit greatly from a PS5 Pro enhancement. So I do understand the frustration. Whether or not this has anything to do with Sony's delisting of the game back in 2020, hard to say. I am leaning more towards no, probably not. I don't think it benefits CD Projekt Red to actively not do a PS5 Pro patch, even if they could, right, for a reason like that. I think it would benefit them more so to just do it if they have the means to get it done, because it's going to probably lead to more sales of the game. But just wanted to let you guys know about that. We're moving on to the next topic, which is an article written up by Push Square, where the title reads, Stalker 2's technical troubles likely fixed by the time it comes to PS5. Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl launches today on PC and Xbox systems, and while critics are generally pretty positive on the survival shooter, it appears to have some technical rough edges. Of course, modern game development means that some of these issues will be fixed with post-launch patches, so when the title does reach PS5, it should be in a better state. It's often forgotten, but a while back, Stalker 2 was revealed to be a timed console exclusive on the Xbox Series. This period, as far as we know, is for 3 months, and if we can assume nothing has changed in the interim, this means PS5 users may get to play as early as February 2025. So yeah, Stalker 2, unfortunately, it seems like it actually has a lot of technical issues. It's kind of mixed, where I've been seeing some people say that the game's so fun and good that they're kind of overlooking these issues, but I've seen other people saying that it's basically a broken mess. So, it is what it is, but yeah, it's worth noting that we did hear a while back, it did leak, that this game is apparently going to be a timed exclusive for 3 months, and we should expect it at some point to come to PS5 in 2025. And yeah, I mean, maybe the articles, what it's saying, will end up being true by the time it does come to PS5. All these issues will be fixed. But let me know if you played Stalker 2 and what you think of it. But that's going to wrap up this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it informative. If you did, be sure to leave it a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share the video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.